Hey nerds, Farmer Jesse here. Welcome to Growers Daily, your daily dose of ecological farming insight. It is Tuesday, July 8th, 2025, and today we're going to discuss automating the farm to grow it, how I started this whole, making videos thing, and $400 musk melons? Yeah, each. So let's do it. All right, everyone, welcome to Tilth Tuesday. Every Tuesday this year will be brought to you by our friends at Tilth Soil. If you're looking for compost or propagation mix, check out tilthsoil.com. Link will be in the show notes. I hope you all are doing well. Obviously, if you can tell, I'm speaking a little softly because the family is still asleep. It is 4:47 in the morning. Mike had a family emergency, therefore I will be editing today, so I wanted to get an early jump on things. Anyway, send your love out for Mike, and while we're on the not great news train, we discovered about 700 messages that you all had kindly sent us through our website that were not coming to us. So if you submitted something via our contact form at no-tillgrowers.com in the last 7-ish months, we did not see it. So our apologies there. We will try to catch up on those as best we can. Obviously, 700 is a lot. How about some good news, though? Well, we are just a few weeks out from the beginning of soccer season in the fall, so I hope you have registered your kiddos if you have things like Saturdays to spare. So that's fun. The heat has broken by a few nearly imperceptible degrees here, so hooray for that. I got my onions out yesterday. Not going to say it was my best job on the weeds this year, as I have been trying to reduce my reliance on outside mulches, which means, well, a slightly higher reliance on cultivation, which itself is tough when you almost double your average rain total in the spring. But they look pretty good, honestly. I was pretty proud of how they turned out despite the rain and weeds and lack of attention. But now they're curing away in our greenhouse. Watch the onion video I did for more on that whole process. So anyway, this week, what is on my mind is $400 musk melons, because why not? You see, this weekend I came across this article in the New York Times called "Move Over $100 Lobster Salad." I have no idea what that's referencing, but anyway, move over $100 lobster salad in the Hamptons. These melons cost $400, and the story was not very interesting. Just people having so much money that they will spend $1,200 on like 3 items at a grocery store. But the melon bit had me interested, especially after seeing the photo of them. Now, I have grown a lot of muskmelons in my day, think cantaloupe and honeydew, and have even grown some really good ones, but never have I grown a melon that looked quite this nice. The netting and the color was perfect. Was it $400 perfect? I mean, the best ones generally sell for closer to $200, but $400 is kind of the rich person in the Hamptons price. But anyway, but also I could tell, like looking at these things, how much work went into these melons. So like maybe it was worth it. I zoomed in on the label of the melon and proceeded down my typical weekend rabbit hole and to figure out what the heck the story is. So here is the story of this melon. Imported from Japan, these melons are called crown melons, and they are a special type of muskmelon that have been cultivated by hand for 100 years in the Shizuoka Prefecture in Japan. The growers follow a really intensive method of production where the melons are grown in their own solo beds with a specific clay soil blend. Every plant is cultivated to just grow a single fruit from a single plant, which I believe are hand pollinated in at least most, if not all cases. They are likewise grown on a trellis where every step has to be handled correctly. Otherwise, disease will take over, the plant will fall over, the fruit falls off or whatever, or the fruit will get blemished even from touching the spiny leaves of cucurbit plants, right? They're kind of spiky in that way. Newspaper or some sort of covering is draped over the melon to prevent sun scald and blemishes while they grow. The idea is that the flavor is concentrated to that one single melon on that one single plant, and according to wealthy people, at least, who can afford them, it lives up to the hype. Assuming they take roughly as long as most muskmelons, we're looking at roughly 100 days to production per melon. So having read about the process and seeing all the attention to detail and challenges, not to mention the risk of growing a single and notoriously disease and pest susceptible crop to fruition like that, do I think it's worth it? I mean, I wouldn't pay $200 or $400 for a melon, but that doesn't mean it's not worth the price. I think societally, value is often incredibly arbitrary. If I told you I bought a $400 Taylor Swift concert ticket, you'd be like, dude, you scored. If I told you I had a $200 meal at some restaurant or opened a $200 bottle of wine, you'd probably think, oh, that's a bit high, but not surprising for those things. But there is something about the idea of a single melon, which takes an unbelievable amount of work and savoir-faire and time to produce, and not to mention 1/3 of somebody's growing season, costing $200 or $400 that makes us balk. Some percentage of whatever they get from that for the, top grade melons has to go into like sales, marketing, and distribution, not to mention the amount of labor spent on each one. Honestly, they probably make an okay living growing these melons, but nothing that would like blow your mind, would be my guess. Now, to be sure, food should not be that expensive, and also farmers are not paid enough for their work that goes into what they produce anyway. Both of those things can be true. But what I enjoyed about this particular rabbit hole is that I find these melons blur the line between art and agriculture and challenge our ideas of like value and worth. I've also seen growers like my buddy Evan at the Culinary Gardener who produces some of the prettiest food I've ever seen, who does something different, honestly, than the average grower. Something unique, something really special, something with a lot of value. Specialty products like that are a difficult business, especially in farming, and I really do struggle with the idea of a $200 melon, but also in a way, it's just what it costs to produce. I have also talked about watermelons and how space-wise and labor-wise, I would have to charge like over $75 a melon to make them the amount of money on them that I make on lettuce. And I don't sell them at that price because no one would buy them at that price. So we also don't grow watermelons as a profitable item, but rather as a barter item or gifts, or just generally because I like watermelon juice. So in some ways, $200 per melon is closer to what it actually costs to grow just a regular old melon than someone might think. Anyway, those are my thoughts. What say you? I know some people are going to focus on that price, but also there has to be at least a very little part of you that thinks, man, that's kind of cool what we can do with agriculture. Anyway, let me know. I'm sure you all have some thoughts. It certainly challenged me, which I always appreciate. Otherwise, we're going to take a quick break and answer an interesting question about taking on 15 acres with a wife and 2 young kids, BRB. Today's episode is brought to you by Farmhand. If you're listening to this, you probably found 5 rare minutes to breathe. But what got pushed back further down the to-do list to make that happen? If it's your CSA newsletter, you're not alone. Farmhand's new newsletter builder was made for busy farmers. It automates weekly emails, drives add-on sales, and makes it easy to keep your customers in the loop without spending hours behind a screen. It launches this summer, but our listeners can request early access now. Visit farmhand.partners/no-till. That's farmhand.partners/no-till. All right, back to the show. If you, the listener, are enjoying this podcast, getting even a small amount of value from it, consider supporting our work over at patreon.com/no-till-growers. I will try to get to questions from everywhere the questions come in, but I will always get to your Patreon questions. Now, today's Patreon question comes from Patreon member Alexander O'Brien, who writes, quote, "Hi, Jesse. My question for you is, do you have any ideas for automating a farm as much as possible? My wife is a stay-at-home mama and farmer raising our 2 young kids, and I'm an over-the-road truck driver. I'm home most weekends, and those are the times that I'm doing the most of my farming activities. We're using landscape fabric for everything, but that cuts down on 90% of weeding. We have 15 acres, only about half an acre is attempting to be farmed right now, but even that is a lot for us. We want to expand eventually to use most of our 15 acres. I have a lot of experience gardening, but no experience farming. We got about 100 chickens, and we have a pretty loyal customer base for our eggs, but our customers are wanting more. I'm wondering what would be the best way to do as much automation as possible. What crops require the least amount of effort day to day, like parenthetically garlic? What systems can we implement to reduce labor as much as possible? Right now, it's just me and my wife is pretty busy raising the kiddos aged 3 months and 20 months. Profitability isn't the number one concern yet, as we make a great income from my job, but we are making a profit on our eggs. We just really want to grow to support our customers as much as possible. We've asked customers what they would be interested in, and we've gotten good responses on mushrooms and microgreens. Would those be possibly a good option for automation, with requiring possibly only 1 to 2 days per week of labor? We've been looking at a 30 by 100 greenhouse from FarmTech or Rimmel. Would that be a good idea? At least that way we'd be able to automate most of the climate and watering. We're in Zone 7A, East Tennessee. Heavy clay soils that are absolutely drenched in water right now from the insane rain events. We lost all of our peppers and tomatoes from Gulf-sized hail the day after transplanting earlier this month. End quote. Thanks, Alexander. Interesting question here, and I'll try to tackle them sort of one by one. The first one was about what crops require the least amount of effort day to day, and you offered garlic. Yes, garlic is a crop that you basically plant in the fall, mulch it, remove the scapes, and then harvest it, but you also have to be able to sell it. So although it is an easy crop to grow in some respects, moving a lot of garlic does require a pretty good plan. in market. Potatoes and onions are similar. They can be easy to produce, but you have to be able to sell and store them. If you're looking for diversity of crops and not just one big cash crop, your days are going to get filled up pretty quickly with a few big things you need to do for each crop. So even though it's just one or two things for each, if you have 5 things, that suddenly becomes 10 or 20 things, which adds up. You asked what systems can you implement to reduce labor as much as possible. That depends a lot on what you grow, but weed control is a large labor cost, so the landscape fabric makes sense there. Watering plants can be very time consuming as well, so automating your greenhouse from the ventilation to the watering itself can help, as you mentioned. You asked about mushrooms and microgreens is a good option for automation, and to some extent, they can be in terms of light, humidity, and ventilation. Like you can automate all those things, but both of them do take some daily or at least regular management. The micros, for instance, require near daily seeding and harvesting. Indoor mushroom production is highly technical and the conditions need regular monitoring and upkeep, not to mention inoculating the blocks, etc. Although alternatively, you could just do shiitake logs, which take a lot of work up front, but produce for a few years. They are relatively easy to sell in terms of mushrooms and are not quite as perishable as, say, oyster mushrooms. But still, you do have to develop all of those markets. It's a lot to move them. You mentioned getting a 30 by 100 greenhouse and asked if that was a good idea. It can be, sure, but you need to decide what you were trying to do with it, like what the goal is with the greenhouse. Just your own plant starts for your field or your plant starts for other people, microgreens, all those things. Honestly, the best thing you can do right now, instead of trying to add another project, is map out the next few years and get a business plan together so you are not, for instance, getting a bigger greenhouse than you need or potentially too small of one. You mentioned having gardening experience and not farming experience, and the difference really is just that one is a business and that has to be treated like a business with a plan, a budget, all of those things. Otherwise, it will just absolutely consume all of your time and money. Honestly, sometimes less is more when it comes to running a business. It sounds like the chickens are doing well for you. Could you expand or grow that enterprise? It's often easier to grow an enterprise than add a new one. For me, one of the biggest challenges with a patch of ground is just how much possibility it holds. The amount of things you can do with a single acre is almost unlimited, so the amount of stuff you can do with 15 is nearly incalculable. And it can feel overwhelming in some ways. Your task will be to narrow it down and simplify. You can do all the farming stuff you want, but with a second full-time job like that, it will be easy to get in over your heads quickly. And it sounds like Mama has her hands full too, and you need to be careful not to overwhelm her with additional work, but you do not need to do it all yourselves either. If there are other things your customers are after, that's a good thing for your community. Could you team up with other farms in the area to help meet that demand and offer their products wherever you are currently selling your eggs? That would give you time to grow into your acreage a little bit more, or perhaps help you decide you're good where you're at for a while. Offer some space for a grower to start a small market garden and let them do that work. That could be an option. Again, farms are overwhelming in the amount of possibility they hold. Your job is to not get too distracted by that possibility, to keep things simple and focus on what is important to you: quality of life, a happy mama, happy customers, etc. Anyway, I'm sure others will have some thoughts, so I will leave that up to you all. Thanks for the question and best of luck. Up next, we will talk about making videos. Sure, be right back.
Hey CSA, welcome to week 5. We have some different things this week. The one that I'm standing by, all this ferny stuff right here that looks somewhat like asparagus ferns, is fennel, and that's going to be new on the menu.
All right, so last week I got this question from @Anthony's Eden Gardens, who asked, quote, "Hey, I would love to hear how you got into making videos on your farm, Jesse," end quote. And I thought I would tell that story because I don't think I fully have yet on the show, and also talk a little bit about how much YouTube has changed. First, I did not set out to be a YouTuber and still somewhat balk at the term, to be honest with you. When I started making videos, it's simply to add value to our customers. I know I have discussed this before, but our marketing approach in 2016 was that people had people had your barber, your dentist, or whatever. And for us, we wanted to be your farmer. And that was frankly where Farmer Jesse was born. I wanted to be their farmer, Farmer Jesse. Part of the idea was that I would make these sort of videos for the CSA shares every week, showing your farm and talking about your veggies and maybe even preparing a dish with the ingredients and just kind of offering some insight into what they were, how they were grown, those sorts of things. And to be honest, no one watched those videos. They weren't very good, so I don't blame them, but nobody watched them. So I just started playing around with the idea of making some cooking style videos and then some farming style videos. And the farming style videos got the most traction. There was a lot of interest in farming, and there just weren't a ton of videos about people making market gardening videos at the time. And so I just started doing more and more of that and gearing them more around specific farming techniques or tools or whatever. Now, they were also not very good and got a few hundred views or whatever per video, but slowly improved and the audience grew. I think it took a couple of years of that to finally monetize it. And even then it was kind of just pennies for a long time. I had also somewhere in the mix started the No-Till Market Garden podcast, and No-Till Growers making the videos and podcasts became sort of one entity. Now, some of those videos were really successful, and I think a few of them have over 1 million views or whatever, but something that people may not have realized or seen was that when TikTok came into the picture a few years ago and short form video sort of took over, YouTube took a massive hit. The videos that used to actually earn money no longer really did and still don't, because there were just fewer eyeballs on them, plus more competition on YouTube itself. So the value in making videos like we used to make suddenly just wasn't really there. Most people who make their money on YouTube don't make it through YouTube. They make it through their own promotions of advertisers, native advertising, that sort of thing. So like sponsorships. But there just aren't that many advertising dollars to go around in the small scale farming world. And moreover, there is a lot of competition for those dollars now that there didn't used to be. Also, large advertisers like Squarespace are a little out of reach for the vast majority of us. In effect, we built the YouTube thing and that went great. But over the course of a couple years, we went from being able to use our ad revenue on YouTube and our few sponsorships to pay ourselves and to pay for several other podcasts to basically barely being able to make ends meet in the matter of about 10 months because of TikTok, short form, all that stuff. In business, markets can change and will change, and the market has changed significantly for the content creation since at least since I got into it. I think you will still see various growers making like classic YouTube style videos like you used to, and we will still do that ourselves from time to time once we catch our breath, especially more farm tour videos and things like that. But they just aren't worth the amount of revenue that they used to be. Most of the newest creators are over there at TikTok, and most of them are earning even less money. And my understanding is they're not earning that much money anyway. I don't really know what the future of content creation is in that way, because from my vantage, creators are making less and less money for more and more content. So as a business with employees, we made the tough decision to try something different, and that's hence this podcast that offered something more sustainable in terms of revenue. And so far, so good, honestly. The revenue is less reliant on one great video every week to sustain us, because when a video bombed, so too did our revenue, which led us to feel like we had to only make a certain kind of video, eliminating our ability to get into niche subjects like we do on this show. Anyway, our business model has always been to, and will remain, figuring out ways to make a living giving information away for free. Giving info away for free is not an easy market to be in, I'm going to be honest with you, and it takes a lot of creativity. But we believe it's important that the revolution ain't happening behind a paywall. So if you can chip in a few bucks, how's that for a segue, to help make it possible and keep the show and all of our work going and growing, No-Till Growers is now officially a nonprofit, a 501c3 in fact, so donations are tax deductible and greatly appreciated. Please make sure to like and subscribe and or follow wherever you're getting this podcast. That's an easy way to help us out. Enormous thank you to all of our show sponsors. And if you'd ever like to sponsor this show, it's a very important to us. You can reach out to Farmer Michelle at no-tillgrowers.com. Huge shouts to Willie Breeding for the theme music, Mike Hilbert for the production help and editing, and the team at No-Till Growers. Also shouts to Epidemic Sound for the background music that you can hear. Pick up a copy of the Living Soil Handbook at no-tillgrowers.com to support our work. Big thank you to everyone over at patreon.com/no-tillgrowers, where at a certain level, or if you just bump up from one level to another, or you sign up in the month of July, you get a shout out on the show. So big shout outs today to Andrea Fronte, Tobias Deerdorf, Tasman, Alicia Arzate, Veselaya Gardens, Cedric Reed, Bill Price, William Wiley Madro, Wish I Started 20 Years Ago, Dwight Yoder, Honey Works, Lynn Tompkins, Steve Hurlbut, at Rebecca S., Mark Revenell, Lee Shelley, Brian McCarthy, Larry Shepard, Martian Cindy, DP, Kat Brannigan, Little Row Farms, Hank Zecca, Ashley Sharp, Jill Crosby, Madison, Scott Roser, Norseguard Farm, Laura Britton, Alberto Diaz, Derek Page, Meredith Light from Granite Springs Farm, The Grown Up Farm, Bob and Ann Patton, Jared Kirst of Rivendell Farm, Steve Larson, Fiona and Donnie of Firefly Farm, Jen Lawrence, Peter Broad, Jason Ruel, Earth Care Farmer Jane Murnard, and Derek Page. So, as you will remember, our little boy, gifted a microscope by his mother to occupy him a bit, is really enjoying the samples he is getting from the pond behind his house. He has all sorts of things. He's seen like everything from tardigrades to ciliates and every little fun and squiggly little thing that he could imagine and find in his little guidebook. But this particular creature that he could see clear as day in his microscope, notably devouring much of the other life in the sample, was not anything he had read about in the microscope guides. Its long body and small legs and distinct sort of bony face. This indeed, undeniably, was a dragon. And this indeed was now his pet. But that is for tomorrow on Poof, the Magic Dragon. No relation. Thanks for watching and/or listening. We will see you tomorrow for a very fun episode. Bye.